Now, South Africa is hosting a major joint naval exercise this week, bringing warships from BRICS-Plus partners into its coastal waters. The exercise includes navies from China, Russia, Iran, and other allied states. The drills focus on maritime safety and joint response operations, highlighting South Africa's expanding role in defense cooperation. Our government says the exercise strengthens international partnerships. Critics have raised concerns about its wider geopolitical implications. Helmoed Heitman is the military expert who joins us today for a little bit more on this conversation. Helmoed, good morning to you. Apparently, we're still saying Happy New Year, so I'm going to continue that tradition today as well. Say Happy New Year. Hope the rest of the year is certainly fruitful for you.
It promises to be interesting, if nothing else.
That's for, at the very least, if you take anything from the 2nd of January into account. You've said that this is a little more than a hyped-up passage exercise. How important is this drill, and what exactly does it say, especially for South Africa?
Okay, look, any exercise is good. You always learn something. Doesn't matter who you're exercising with. You know, even as a total Mickey Mouse force, at least you learn how not to do things. Now, these are not Mickey Mouse forces. So any exercise, particularly naval exercises, because, you know, if you have a ship sinking, if you have an incident of piracy, you don't know whose ships are nearest to respond. And it may be one of your ships and some other country's ships. So if you understand each other's procedures and you can talk to each other, you know what the signal systems are, then you can cooperate effectively to deal with the pirates or to rescue the survivors. So in principle, good idea. It makes a lot of sense to exercise with the Chinese. They're a growing naval power. They may be not so great economically for us because the balance of trade is all wrong, but that makes a lot of sense. The only downside there is that most of their neighbors regard them as a threat. That we do need to keep that in mind, including India, which is the other big power. It makes a lot less sense to be exercising with Russia and Iran. They are strategically and economically irrelevant to us, and they're both regarded as bullies and enemies by most of their neighbors. So that puts us in the position of saying to a lot of our friends that, oh, we are friends with your bully, your regional bully. And that's particularly bad news. You think about that most of our positive trade flow is with Europe and the United States. So there's a political issue here that is not so great. As it is, I'm not sure the Iranians are actually going to show. And there was some talk that their ships might have turned back as a result of the problems at home. Of the others, I think Ethiopia is sending some observers. Indonesia, probably just an observer. They're also not that keen on the Chinese. So in principle, really good idea. In practice, politically, maybe two of the partners we should rather have left out.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, I mean, would this actually risk dragging the South African National Defence Force into perhaps wider geopolitical disputes far beyond our own waters here? Or is that of little risk, do you think?
Look, I don't think there's much risk of dragging us into an actual fight anywhere. What we do risk is, certainly the United States under President Trump, being harsher on us economically than he's already been. And that's going to hurt because that's the country with which we have the highest positive trade balance. The Europeans also won't be all that pleased. They're not going to get quite that excited. They're not that paranoid, but they're not going to be happy with us. And we rely on them. It would be much worse if we did things. For instance, there was talk at one stage of involving the Chinese in refurbishing our ships. That would be in breach of the confidentiality agreement with the German shipyards and the German government, for that matter, from whom we bought the ships. So we do need to be a bit more careful in our foreign policy. I don't think we quite understand what we're doing sometimes.
Yeah,
so I think no risk of getting involved in somebody's conflict, but there's economic risk.
Wow, I'm actually fascinated by it all because one wonders, you'd think that something like this actually helps us then, because we get to date with all the naval equipment, for example, understanding how maybe the technological advancements that we have aren't to a certain standard of our counterparts, whether it be BRICS-Plus and the like. Is it not more about enhancing that BRICS cooperation too by doing this, as opposed to just looking at the broader global sphere like Europe, like the US, etc., who may be perturbed by this?
Look, yes, but bear in mind that two of the key BRICS partners, Brazil and India, are not taking part. India, because they really don't like the Chinese very much. In Brazil, I'm not so sure. But that's a factor. And most of BRICS, China is a big trade partner, India is a fairly big trade partner, also a negative balance of trade. Most of the other BRICS partners are strategically and economically irrelevant to us. BRICS is primarily, and I've even had Chinese diplomats when they're not feeling very diplomatic, say as much to me. It's primarily an anti-American posturing exercise, more than anything else. But having said that, look, it makes sense to exercise in principle with everybody possible. You don't have to be friends, particularly naval. You do not have to be friends to learn something in an exercise, and it always helps to be able to cooperate if you happen both to be on the scene of a crisis. So that makes perfect sense. I personally wish we had a lot more exercise in a lot more countries, all of them, not just our BRICS partners, not just our Western trade partners, but everybody. And certainly we should, for instance, be returning to the Interop West and Interop East exercises we used to have with our neighboring navies. That was an annual thing that's gone away for lack of funding. In terms of learning, yes, the Chinese, for instance, their warships are pretty impressive. We can have a good look at stuff there. From the Russians, if they're willing to speak, we could learn a lot about how to deal with drone attacks, both seaborne drones and aerial drones. But from the Iranians, a bit less. Their waters are totally different, that there's not that much to learn. There's always something, but not that much. But certainly from Russia and China, there are things we could learn, and hopefully we will put the right people aboard their ships during the exercise to, as my dad's mom used to tell her kids, to steal whenever they can, with their eyes and with their ears. So that really will be worthwhile.
Very interesting. A lot of people would then say that there's actually no defense mechanism for BRICS anyway. So this is misposturing and mislabeling of what this of this exercise, and trying to find legitimacy in order to get it done as well. Do you think this undermines trust, especially then with countries like Brazil and India who aren't coming?
Look, I think labeling it as a BRICS or BRICS-Plus exercise is a bit of a little fib, because, as I say, particularly two of the big original BRICS partners, Brazil and India, are not there, and I mean they really are part of it. So that's a problem. I think it was done, as you suggested there. I think it was done to dress it up and make it look a little bit less purely anti-American, or anti-West for that matter. I don't think it'll affect trust with India and Brazil. I mean, they're also in BRICS. They deal with Russia and China all the time. Iran, they don't much like, so that's a bit of an issue. So I don't think a biggie at this stage, apart from the possible American reaction. We're not looking at some sort of catastrophe. We're just looking at a misstep, and we need to be a little bit wiser in the future. And maybe the counterpoint to this would be if we could step up our exercises with the French, for instance, who operate in the Indian Ocean, persuade the Germans to come back for another exercise, Good Hope, maybe some other navies, even the US Navy, although one exercise was cancelled fairly late, which is a pity. But let's put more effort into those to get balance. We're supposed to be neutral, so let's be neutral. Let us not get involved on anybody's side in any of these conflicts.
So should we be doing more of these? And I know you actually highlighted a little bit of that, some of the exercises that we had been doing already in the past that had gone away because of funding and the like, the people we could be learning from here. How often have we been having these sort of naval exercises? And if we were to have more, what would that actually mean for our navies, the South African National Defence Force per se, and then the brighter cooperations we would have, whether it be on a defence mechanism or otherwise?
Look, we used to have every second year we had an exercise with the German Navy, Exercise Good Hope. Also, every second year we had the IPSAMAR exercises, which is India, Brazil, South Africa, which grew out of the non-military IPSA, Economic Agreement. Those were every second year. We pretty much every second year had an exercise as well with the French Navy, with their ships based in the Union, and then also with the Americans pretty much every second or third year. A lot of them were disaster relief type exercises, search and rescue exercise, but they were there. And then, as I said, we had the regular Interop West, Interop East exercises with our neighboring navies, and occasionally went a bit further and had an exercise with the Nigerians, for instance. Now, we should do a lot more of that. And not only in our waters, we should also send our ships elsewhere, as we do with IPSAMAR, for instance. And we've done it with the one German exercise, Good Hope. The advantages are always, you get your ships to sea and the crews can settle down as a crew aboard the ship. You know, you can have 150 people aboard a ship and they're all qualified in their post. But if the ship doesn't spend time at sea exercising, they don't gel as a crew. And then they would be in trouble if they went into a fight. So there's that. You can see what technology other people are using it, how they're using it. You can learn even more than technology. You can learn from their tactics and their techniques and their procedures. There's always something to learn. You know, no matter how good you think you are, there's always something you've overlooked or forgotten or just not even thought about. So that's always worthwhile. What it would do is, A, improve the Navy quite measurably. And in fact, if we did it intelligently, we'd also send other parts of the defense force over. Now, we have sent people, for instance, Army people to Brazil for jungle training, to take part in special forces competitions in India and China. We send some officers on courses, unfortunately, mainly to Cuba, which is a bit pointless, but we've also sent to other countries. Strangely, not to the bigger countries, despite them often offering courses free of charge. And we prefer to send to Cuba. I don't know why we do that. But there's always that learning. We even at one stage, we had the Malaysian Army come here to exercise at our combat training center. The Singapore Defense Force still comes here to do some technical evaluations of equipment and train their drone operators.
Wow, okay.
So and there's more that we could be doing.
Sure.
And the more the better, because you improve your skills all the time. And of course, it's good for the soldiers, sailors, airmen, because they get to interact with colleagues from other services, other countries, which is a good learning opportunity, and it is also fun.
Helmoed, let me ask this then, just as a final question, and I suppose this is a global context kind of question as well, because there's that 2% defense spend, 2% of GDP defense spend that nations that are part of NATO need to adhere to, even though they're questioning that and saying that perhaps they need to increase that figure beyond that 2% figure. Is South Africa meant to be looking at its defense in a similar vein? Can South Africa pretty much do that? Would it be helpful to South Africa, or would it actually take away from, or drift South Africa away from that stated non-alignment mandate and policy that we've always had because of the way we would be militarizing ourselves as a country?
Look, now, if you want to be neutral, you can either be an unarmed neutral that everybody will step on if they feel like it, or you can be an armed neutral. That's what the Swiss did and the Swedes for decades, centuries. They were neutral. They didn't get involved in wars, but they were well enough armed that nobody bothered to try their luck with them. It just was too expensive. Even the Austrians after World War II, they had what they called their hedgehog strategy or porcupine strategy, saying, sure, you can invade us, but it's going to cost you a lot, and it's going to take so long that the other guy will come in as well. You know, it was NATO versus Warsaw Pact. So if we want to be neutral, we need to at the very least be able to protect our own waters. And because it's important for us, the trade channel, the Mozambique channel, we should be able to help any of our immediate neighbors if they are faced with a major threat, be it a guerrilla threat or anything else. Now, I'm not saying there we should stand off some invasion by America or China or whoever. I don't think any of them are going to come here to invade anyway. We're much too unimportant for that. But we should be able to deal with irregular threats in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we seem to have this idea that guerrillas are all semi-trained clowns. They're not. They're very serious people with very serious capabilities and increasingly well-armed and well-led. So you need a serious force to deal with them. To do that, we need to be spending quite a lot more on defense than we are to keep our equipment up to date and at least keep it operational.
Helmoed.
And also to fill some gaps like maritime patrol.
Yeah. Helmoed, look, I've only got 30 seconds. Do you think the US could actually look to invade South Africa? I mean, people asking the question whether something like that could possibly happen here, considering what's happened out of Venezuela.
I don't see it. Venezuela was important to them partly because it's in the neighborhood and a Chinese and Russian ally, with the Chinese and Russians doing military things there too. And Venezuelan oil is important both to China and to Russia for different reasons. So Venezuela was important to us, but we're not important to them.
Yeah.
That's one advantage of being a small guy that's not too important.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. I think very important when you consider the geopolitics of it all and where things are going right now. That joint naval exercise of BRICS-Plus nations. Helmoed Heitman, military expert, joining us on that conversation.